Welcome to Holy Tangents, a podcast for busy people looking to understand big topics in the areas of religion, politics, and philosophy, all shared from a Christian worldview. Let's listen in today's conversation with Troy and Stephen.
All right, Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back in the studio. I know our listeners don't know this, but we had some snow come through that kept us out of the studio for a little bit. We had some other just kind of like normal family things come up, and so it's good to be back. Good to be doing this for this next episode.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. So our discussion for today, I'm summarizing it as the breakdown of cultural unity. Okay, particularly in America. All right.
Sure.
So what do I mean by that? Well, let me first acknowledge. So I thought about this topic for some time, and I'll define the terms here in just a moment. But I do want to give credit because it kind of solidified in my mind in a fresh way after I saw a video from Matt Walsh who discussed this topic.
Right.
And so I got to give credit where credit's due. Now he doesn't. I think we're going to go in a little bit different direction, but there is some unity there. And so what do I mean by cultural unity? So if you think about, let's go back to the 90s, okay?
Yeah.
There were certain themes, certain movies, certain shows, certain music. Hey, you may not have liked, the Backstreet Boys or Britney Spears or NSYNC or Nirvana, but you knew who all those people were. You may not have liked Titanic, but you knew the song, whether you liked it or not. It was on the airwaves and ad nauseum. You may not have seen the movie, but you knew of the themes. Jurassic Park. You could pick up any one of these things. There were cultural. Michael Jackson. You may not like Michael Jackson, but
you knew who he was.
You knew he was.
Yeah.
Everybody knew his latest hits or whatever was coming out. There were Seinfeld, Friends. Again, you may not have watched those or liked them, but you knew of the characters, you knew of the themes or maybe funny moments or whatever. And generally speaking, a sizable portion of Americans agreed with or shared in those experiences together. And I mean like a vast majority of Americans. Not all, of course, you're going to have your outliers, right? But you could kind of relate to and agree with your fellow American about these big sort of cultural themes and moments. Even in politics, there was a time where there was some pretty good overlap between Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
That's kind of hard to believe today, but I was thinking, I think it was Bill Clinton who he passed the the Defense of Marriage Act?
DOMA. Yeah, that's
DOMA,
right.
Which obviously Democrats would not agree with today.
No, and that's very recent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that. So there was there was some overlapping, right? Yeah, it's very recent. Fair enough. There was some overlap about even in politics of like a shared unified idea. And what was interesting is you had to do those things. So this is going to sound kind of crazy. Part of it was you had to experience these things the same way. So if you wanted to see the latest movie, you had to go to the movie theater.
That's right.
If you wanted to hear the latest song, you had to call into your local radio station or go buy the CD or the tape yourself, go to the store and actually get it. If a movie was released and you wanted to rent it, you had to go to a place called Blockbuster.
That's right.
Where
and you saw all of the new releases in one place, and there was no algorithm like showing up on your Netflix feed saying, here, these are the new releases Troy would like.
Yes.
It was, these are the new releases that everyone's just going to.
Period.
Yeah.
And if the shelf was bare, you had to wait, Stephen. You had to wait to come back.
I remember.
Until somebody returned the cassette or whatever.
Yeah.
To go view it yourself. And, so there was, when I mean a shared culture, I'm talking about, basic themes, values, experiences that we as Americans agreed upon, personalities we resonated with. And what we've seen probably over the past couple of decades is a deterioration of that.
Sure.
A disintegration of that. And I think it has some pretty drastic effects. So that's the intro to the topic. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this, you used the term monoculture. So like the death of a monoculture, and 100%. So I agree with that. So one of the so I work in education, and when you talk to students, right? Now, when I was growing up, I would have watched a lot of the Westerns and action movies that my dad did. So like when one of his friends or like one of my friends' dads made a reference to, like Die Hard or something like that, even though I wasn't necessarily like, I didn't, or maybe even go back even further, like a movie from the 70s or 60s, a movie that I wouldn't have probably grown up with.
Yeah.
I still knew the reference because there was just like Jaws, right?
Of course.
When you hear the dun-na, 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 dun, right? Everyone knows, okay, yeah, that's coming from the movie Jaws. But not anymore. So, like, working in education, you'll mention some of these references to kids. Something maybe as simple as the dun-na, dun-na, and they're like, what's that from?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? And it's like, I'm talking about Jaws. They're like, what's Jaws? and they just, and it's not just a, like, I'm getting older and realizing it. Because I know that some people are going to listen to that and think, you're just getting older,
You're an
man.
old guy.
That's a symptom of getting older. No, I think it's almost like because change happens so quickly, a lot of what defines a generation are its cultural experiences. And if you notice, generations are getting, like the time span of generations are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I'm not the only one. This is not a new idea with me. So I think it was Simon Sinek. So Simon Sinek people know who that is. He's a leadership guru. And I don't like everything he has to say, but one of the things that he's talked about in the last 10 years is how technology and social media has, like what you're saying, kind of created a lot of these subcultures. And not only does it break off newer generations from older ones, like it disconnects them, it also breaks them off from one another. So where instead of like you have this a lot of the same shared cultural experiences, you have just basically people living in all these different tribes or subcultures. And so not only do they not have a connection to the past or the entertainment and movies and cultural references, just like, I'm not even talking about their parents, of like their older siblings sometimes. So not only do they not have a connection to that, they don't even, a lot of times don't even have a connection to one another about certain things. Now, there are some exceptions, right? Like the show Stranger Things. That, for whether you like that film, whether you like that show or not, I'm not advocating for it. Sure. That's not what I'm doing here. But what I'm saying is those kids know, a lot of kids know that show. So for some reason, there are some things that transcend those subculture, that splintered cultural experience. And I actually had a teacher who was talking recently in professional development. He brought up that show, and he said, whether you like that show or not, he goes, what is it about that show that draws people in? He made a really good point. He said, there's something nostalgic, because it takes place in the 80s, right? It's like the show that takes place in the early 80s. He goes, there's something about that kids see, and no matter what, they all long for a time when we had a monoculture, when we didn't have phones and didn't have social media, and we did go off with our friends on our bicycles and
hang out.
And we left it, whatever. It was a Saturday, you like left after breakfast and you were gone all day, and your mom didn't see you till dinner.
Didn't worry about it.
That's not normal anymore. And so, but the kids long for it. So, but before I go into that, because I don't want to get us too off track, I say all that to say is that it's more than just me getting older. There's like there was an expectation that you knew cultural references from movies and books, and I think that's because a lot of times, like, so my generation was, you had, and I think this is yours too, right? So you had TBS or TNT, and if you like, no matter what, you watched whatever movie was on. That was it. TNT, like, and it was going to be a rerun, and it might be a Western from the 1970s, and it's like you were going to sit down and everyone watched it, and if you're like, I don't know what this movie is, and then that gave room for your parents to say, oh yeah, this is the one with John Wayne, this is a classic, you got to watch this, and it's like, all right, I'm going to watch it, and then you end up loving it. That doesn't happen anymore. You go back even to like boomer generations, so past Gen X and the millennials. You go to boomers, there was one TV in the house.
Yep.
And everyone had to tune into it. So it's like, hey, Bonanza's on tonight. Guess what? Everyone's watching Bonanza.
Yeah.
From 4 years old to 45 years old, everyone's watching Bonanza. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
You have to be very intentional about wanting that kind of time with your family. And it takes, I think, you're filtering. There's worldview conversations when you're doing stuff like that. We just don't do that kind of stuff anymore. We're content, I think, in the modern American home. Everyone peeks in. Everyone's in the same room. Mom's in the kitchen on her phone. Dad's on his laptop. Kids are on their iPads with headphones on. Everyone's together, but everyone is diving into maybe completely different cultural experiences. So I'll pause it right there.
No,
I don't want to go
you
too
hit
far.
the nail on the head. I mean, so you can see this on display within the family unit if we're being honest with ourselves. And I hope our listeners just pause for a second. That is a new thing.
It is a new thing.
This kind of mood and way of living, it's new. It's not been around very long.
And it's not normal.
It's not normal, and it's not helpful. And we'll definitely get into that for sure. And so there's a lot of ways we see this being on display. The splintering of culture. Gosh, we're more divided than ever, aren't we? I mean, we've talked about it before, the inability to have dialogues and conversations. Just think about that. Not only there's like hostility of worldviews, there's not like an agreement point where we can at least like reference together and use that as a starting point for a conversation.
Yeah.
You could get on a conversation with somebody and your world is literally extremely different than somebody else because of the content you absorb is so different than the content that they absorb.
So I think was it you that told me about the Patton Oswalt Bill Maher conversation? So this is an example to exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
So it might have been
Bill
someone
Maher,
else.
Yeah. I may have referenced him one before. I don't know if it was that one though.
Okay, so it was my father-in-law. So my father-in-law recently told me that he was watching an interview between Bill Maher and
who's not a Christian.
Who's not a Christian. He likes to pride himself as a moderate, whatever. And then maybe he is. Well, anyway, we'll let our audience decide that. And then Patton Oswalt, who is a self-proclaimed progressive, doesn't claim to be moderate or conservative in any way. And so I would disagree. I would be on the other side of the spectrum of his worldview. But so Bill Maher, who prides himself as a moderate, Patton Oswalt's going on and on about this some political issue that I think this was about a year, or no, this was in the last couple months, that's really important to progressives right now. And so Bill Maher kind of pauses him. He's like, hey, well, what do you think about, you're passionate about this. What do you think about what's happening to Christians in Nigeria right now? I think it's Nigeria.
Yeah.
Christians in Nigeria, they're being slaughtered. And Patton Oswalt goes, what? He had no idea. Totally disconnected that was happening. Like, now, if it were maybe an other people group that was being slaughtered, I bet his algorithm would have brought that to his attention on his social media feed, on his X feed. But because it was Christians being slaughtered, he's in. And this is the true example. I know it sounds like a cliche. This is a true example of the echo chamber of the bubble. He had no idea. And Bill Maher, kudos to him, even though he tries to stay abreast to conservative and progressive issues. But his point was to say, and he kind of shamed, I think, Patton Oswalt a little bit in this, was like, bro, how can you be so passionate about these things, claim to be about human rights and justice, when you have no idea what's happening? Like, what's happening to Christians in Nigeria is way worse to whatever you're crying about here. And so I thought that was very telling. It kind of speaks to what you just said about the example of not knowing things that are happening right in front of you, or maybe not right in front of you, but that you can have access to know about, that's mainstream news around the world, but that you don't know in your own country.
And it creates not only a disconnection with your fellow man, your fellow American, it creates almost a virtual hostility, almost like you're against. It's like you're from two different planets almost.
Sure.
And I think that's a really sad thing, right? That's
what a sad thing.
It gives us, like, hey, we don't even have a starting point for a conversation because we can't even agree on 1 + 1 = 2, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the death of the monoculture, if you will, is fueling that. And I don't mean to put you on the spot because I was thinking about a question, and you don't have to give me an answer, but as we go through our conversation, maybe something will hit you. Like, when was the last iconic moment, a good moment, not a sad moment, a good moment that the majority of Americans were like, that's awesome? I'll give you an example. Like, I'm thinking of
That's a great point.
landing on the moon. All right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, every American was just like, this is awesome.
Get behind that.
Get behind that. This is an achievement. We love this. We celebrate it. I was thinking maybe Michael Phelps winning all those gold medals in the Olympics was another one that crossed my mind.
Sure.
If you followed the Olympics, but then not everyone followed it. Like, when was the last good moment, not sad moment, good moment where everyone kind of linked arms and was unified? Well, it's been a while.
Well, the problem with that, so I would say the problem with that, the big reason why we can't do that, but you're right, I can't think of a moment. I think the reason why we can't do that is because of cancel culture, which is a product of all these different subcultures and the death of the monoculture, like you're saying. And the reason why is because we can't just celebrate someone for their achievements. That's essentially what cancel culture is. It's that's why we cancel, like, our founding fathers, right?
Yes.
It's like we have to go into their personal lives and
tear
say,
them down.
I can't respect this guy who did these amazing things and invented these things because he did these other terrible things over here. And I get that to a certain extent. Like, no matter what someone's achievements are, if they did things to the level of, like, an evil dictator like Hitler, right? Like, some people were like, well, Hitler gave us the Autobahn, which I don't even think is true, but people will say that. I don't know who gave us the but people, like, I've recently, you'll hear people say, like, oh yeah, Adolf Hitler, he did a lot of great things. Okay, no. Right? That's not what I'm talking about. Yep. Yeah, off the list, right? When there's some people that they're what they're known for in history is so egregious, we can't really look at their achievements. But for the most people, like, everyone did stuff that we're not proud of.
Sure.
But we don't know how to celebrate people for their achievements. So, like, something like Michael Phelps, right? With the Olympics. If someone were to achieve all these gold medals now, right? The first thing people would do is, left or right, would to dive into their politics and be like, oh, but
he posted something.
He posted this. He supports Israel. He's evil, right? or this person's is for the legalization of marijuana. Eat right. Which, again, I'm not saying I'm for, right. All I'm saying is that, okay, put their politics aside. What do they actually do? Like, the guy, and I'm just giving this as an example. This Olympian competed in his sport, won a bunch of gold medals, or this lady competed in her sport, won a bunch of gold medals. Can we just take a minute to celebrate that as Americans and enjoy it? Like, yes, if she's progressive, do I disagree with her politics? Sure, but, like, am I gonna poo-poo on the years of work she took to achieve that in representing our country? No, I'm not. Yeah. And we just don't know how to do that. We can't just, like, we have to dig into everybody's past. We have to if someone doesn't exactly agree with everything we believe on every point, we can't celebrate their achievements at all.
We got to tear them down.
We got to tear them down.
And it's sad, and I think it's fueled. I mean, there's so much fallout to this, and it's important to take a pause. And I hope people that, and you go back to the 90s, you could do the same exercise with 80s, 70s, 60s, all these moments and themes that people were unified around. We just don't see it anymore, and it's creating a lot of problems, a lot of havoc. You mentioned families, relationships are dying. Relationships are really just, they're deteriorating. Even within homes, you see probably with students, everyone's kind of siloed, right? And those silos used to be like 3 big silos, like the jocks or, the nerds or whatever, over here. No, there's like 1 million silos now.
Yes. That's a great point.
And even when those silos have silos, and it's really, really sad because it's not who we are supposed to be. It's not who God designed us to be.
Yeah.
He's designed us to be relational. We certainly don't. I'm not saying every American should agree on everything. Of course not. But there should be some unifying themes, that values, I hope, that we could have it as a starting point so that we don't see this deterioration. Man, it's had a lot of problems. I want to mention the root causes of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Why is this happening? So, again, if I mentioned Matt Walsh in the beginning, his view, he points back to the breakdown happening around 2007, 2008. You say, well, there must have been Barack Obama getting elected. No, that's not it. It's the advent of the iPhone. The advent of the iPhone in 2007. And I would add on to that the introduction of social media a few years prior, Facebook. So again, for a younger audience, there was a time where you didn't have a phone on you at all.
Yeah, I remember those days.
And if you did, now cell phones were introduced in the 90s, at least in mass production. Yeah. It was a phone.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
My first phone was the Nokia brick.
It was like the size of a brick.
Yeah, it was. And then it got a little bit smaller, and I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you think about it now. You know, we have our smartphones here. The least impressive thing about this is its ability to make phone calls. It's a computer in your pocket.
Absolutely right. I've never thought about
the phone, as we call it, a smartphone. But that's like the least impressive thing that it can do.
It's a personal computer.
It is a PC in your pocket that is connected to the world.
Yes.
At all times. And so I just want to, again, for people listening, just take us, if you grew up in a different era, pause and think about, like, this is not normal to have this device with us all the time. Literally billions of people existed without it before.
Yeah.
And had a shared culture, a shared unity around themes. And again, the argument is that this device, in combination with social media, is the root cause of this breakdown of culture. So what are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So in addition to talking about root causes, I think, yes, technology, when you have more devices, more personalized devices, going back to the TV example, right? When you had one TV that was only accessible to the family, it limits your choices. When you have multiple types of devices that can all stream and all have right, then it kind of democratizes your entertainment choices to where it's like, okay, I don't want to watch this. So I have options now. I can just go up my room and go on my iPad.
Yeah, I'll go watch my stuff.
Yeah, go watch my stuff. So yes, because technology is way more accessible now, I would say that is a root cause. And here's why. Here's what it contributes to. So there was I'm pulling from way back. But I think it's George Gilder. George Gilder he's a politician. He was worked with the Reagan administration. Okay. And anyway, he essentially does a lot of sociological work. And so I think this is him who said it. So if I'm misattributing this, I'm sorry. But I think George Gilder was one of the ones that he talks about the breakdown of the family, and that the reason why. And I'm not saying that this is intentional or there's malevolent forces or the people that make these iPhones are intentionally trying to do this. I don't believe in mass global conspiracies like that. I do believe in mass global supernatural conspiracies.
Absolutely.
I do think there's a spiritual enemy that's working behind the scenes of all these different things.
Fueling it. Yeah.
That's fueling it, that is moving towards an end that they want to see. So in that sense, I could say, yeah, the spiritual enemies are behind this. But George Gilder kind of, I think, gets at the idea that, and other social scientists that have said similar things, have said that dictatorships, large governments, body politics, or politicians that want to try to control the masses, they don't like family bonds.
Yes.
Because family bonds, community bonds that are connected very strongly by shared cultural experiences, they're hard to manipulate.
Absolutely.
But if you individualize people down to the point where they are all kind of in their silo and they have the false not assumptions, but they kind of have the false idea of community and shared experiences. They're much easier to manipulate or control, because if you don't have people talking to one another, then those bonds aren't created. But if you have everyone on a screen thinking that they're connected, well, then you can manipulate algorithms. You can manipulate those shared cultural experiences. And so the example that's given that I've often heard, and I've also heard Pastor Doug Wilson mention this as well. He talks about if people are in family and community bonds, they're rigid and hard to reshape. But if you're just an individual, you're like a sack of BBs, like a sack of metal BBs, and they're either easily lubricated, easily manipulated, and there's no. But when those molecular structures start to bond and they tighten up and they it's harder to break down those kinds of things, and so it's harder to control. Yeah. And so again, I don't know if now if there's dictatorships and things like that. Well, I mean, then I would say dictatorships, malevolent governments, and we know in history that is what they've tried to do, right? They've tried to break down family bonds, and oftentimes those kinds of governments will replace the family because they make people easier to control. But if you think about futuristic types of literature, like dystopian literature, like 1984 and Brave New World, and what are they trying to do? Like Brave New World, they want everyone like drugged up, and they want to eliminate shared cultural experiences. 1984, their strategy is a little bit different. There's control. They're not doing it through the breakdown of shared cultural experiences, but they definitely want to keep everyone individualized, and they want to replace certain normal community structures and ways of entertaining and hanging out with one another. They want to replace that with things that they can control. So I say all that to say, I do think we have to be mindful of how we use technology, who's behind the use of that technology, because, maybe there's not this malevolent government that's trying to do it, but there's spiritual forces that are working behind these things and using these things that, as Christians, it's not far out there to say. You know, it's happening. So.
We're not anti-tech here,
We're not anti-tech.
By
What's
God's
the term?
grace,
Luddites? We're not Luddites. Yeah.
We're not advocating going back to the Stone Age here. There's wonderful technology. Hey, we have this podcast because of technology. So there are some wonderful things there, but as always, it can be abused. And so, I think that's a fair point you made. I would say in general, if you look at all of the social media companies, tech companies, it is money, it's marketing that's fueling it all. They're like the goal of pick any content, right? Yeah. The goal is to keep you looking.
Yes.
That's the goal. It doesn't matter what it is, good, bad, helpful, not helpful, whatever it takes to keep you locked in and looking at your screen. That's the goal. Yeah. And it's really sad because I'm sure you've seen the examples. I remember my wife and my daughter, they like to go preliminary Christmas shopping right around before Thanksgiving, okay? Yeah. And so when they go and do their shopping with my mother-in-law and the family and stuff, the ladies go shopping, I like to go out, and eat at the Waffle House with my son. So we have a, kind of dad Sunday. And I remember this past year, we went to the Waffle House, and I'm sitting there, and I'm enjoying, a meal with him, and it just kind of catches my eye over the corner. In the Waffle House, you come sit and wait for a table to be opened up, and this dad walks in, okay? And he's got two boys with him. One's, maybe 10, the other one's maybe 6, 5, something like that. And you know what I'm going to say? They both have their devices. They have a headset. They have, looks like an iPad or something in their hands. And the dad is there. He's standing there. He's on his phone. And then they're literally like kneeling on the chairs in the floor, staring while they're waiting for their seat. They're not talking. They're not having a conversation. Right. They're not experiencing anything together. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you here? Are you here just to pick up a meal? Like, okay, fine. Yeah. But man, you're what are you doing? Like, take the device away and experience a conversation with your kids.
Each other, yeah.
Each other, right?
It's so okay. A couple things that, and then probably you have examples too. So a couple things I've done to kind of fight against this, because I get it. I get the urge to do that, and I've noticed that in myself. Like when we go to a restaurant, the urge is strong. Like especially if it's a long day. Like I kind of just want to doom scroll while my girls are sitting there. I do. Like I want to look at news. I want to look at, and so, and of course, my wife has said something to me about it. But this was months ago. So I've tried to make an active change. That's not perfect.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've done is like I say it. Like I don't announce it, but I say it in my mind. Like we go out to eat, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm going to make sure no one else is on a device. My girls always ask, like, sometimes they'll ask, like, hey, can we watch because I can get Prime, Amazon Prime on my phones.
Sure.
Hey, can we watch a cartoon? And no. And so what I've started to do is I've just started to tell them stories. And so now it gets to the point, every time we sit down to eat, they don't ask to watch something anymore. They ask for a story, which has kept me on my toes. And honestly, it's exhausting because sometimes I don't want to tell a story. But what I'll do is I will look up. I find myself looking up, like, because all the Grimm's fairy tales, all the summaries for them are on Wikipedia. So, like, I'll look up a Grimm's fairy tale. I'll look up, like, I do tell them Bible stories. I look up Bible stories.
Yeah, of course.
So, of course. But I'll try to look up stuff so that I have a few in the can that, like, I'm ready to share. I'm like, hey, Dad, can I have a story? Yeah, I actually have a story. Let me tell you about, the Maze of the Minotaur or something like that. Anyway, so I'm not gonna say it's easy. Yeah. It is exhausting, but it's created a really cool culture around storytelling and shared cultural experiences in my family that I don't want to lose. Another thing I do, so not that people think that I'm like this, robot or automaton that's shooting out stories all the time. No. So one of the things, like, if I want some just kind of like, we do allow screen time in my house, but we don't do any disconnected screen time. We don't. So if we watch something, we're watching it all together. And it's like not every day of the week. It's like a family movie day. So one of the things I've done is I've introduced them to cartoons that I used to like.
I do the same.
So when I was growing,
Looney Tunes, man.
Looney Tunes. So
Scooby-Doo.
There was a show when I was growing up called Hey Arnold. So
I don't know. Remember that?
Yeah, so Hey Arnold from the 90s, early 2000s. So the seasons were super cheap on Amazon Prime. So I just went ahead and I bought, there's like 8 seasons. I bought all 8 seasons because I think they're like, some of them were like maybe $4 or $5 a season. So it was a little bit of an investment, but it was like, okay, $50 and I own most seasons. And they love the show, and it's not overstimulating like some of these modern cartoons are. And it's a lot of like the music is great. Some of the themes are fantastic, and it's getting them to think about things and honestly have similar shared cultural experiences that I had when I was a kid. And so it's made our conversations better. And then what's cool is now I'll reference something from like and Hey Arnold's not the only thing I do. Sure. I'll reference an old movie or a cartoon, and they know what it is. Like we watch Little Giants, right? So I could reference the annexation of Puerto Rico, and then my girls
that's the play. The play they run, right?
Yeah, and so my girls will know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And they'll know stuff like that, and that makes me happy. Maybe that's dumb, and maybe I'm not achieving anything in doing that. I think that I am, though.
I don't think it's dumb at all.
Yeah.
I think you're forming a bond there that is good. It's right. It's proper. Those are shared experiences that you resonate with another family or another people. And that's the point we're trying to make is like that's breaking down. That's deteriorating. And it's something that we have to be mindful of because it's kind of crept up on us. I mean, for example, you mentioned the death scroll. I mean, it's happened. Let's all admit. Mm-hmm. You look up, you get your phone out, you look at one thing, and next thing you know, like an hour has passed.
Yes.
And you kind of wake up out of a digital coma, and you're like, "What just happened?"
It's the easiest to do at night.
It is. You think, "What is going on? How did this happen?"
Yeah.
And that's the point. That's the point of these platforms is they want you endlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
you're not researching something important.
You're not.
You're just jumping from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I will say, just by way of pausing, there are some dangerous things out there too.
Yes.
Like a lot of dangerous things. And I think particularly for kids, this is, as parents, and we don't want to outsource parenting. And I get it sometimes, like, hey, I need a little quiet time. Here's your tablet or whatever. We got to be really careful. I mean, there is like real threats out there. I mean, obviously we know pornography is just rampant. Things could happen and pop up on your kids' screens. Trafficking, is a huge deal,
especially through online gaming.
Yeah, I mean, online, you're exposed to all these things, and so I think the temptation is to think, oh, my kid is safe if I just put them in their room with their screen.
Yeah.
And my point is they're not actually always safe.
Yeah, and you're right. And I would actually say unsafe in so many kinds of ways, right? So there's a lot of, so our staff is going through a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And just a disclaimer to people that are listening, Jonathan Haidt is not a believer, but Troy and I believe in this thing called God's design. And the natural law. And so there's a way that God created the world that even an atheist like Jonathan Haidt can observe and say, like, oh man, like some of the things we're doing are really messing up people and kids, and here's how it's messing it up. And so that's what the book's about. The book's about how through excessive screen time and this kind of like death of the monoculture, we are really messing kids up in some ways that we're not even aware of and that we need to be tuned into. And so, like, even though he's not a believer, he's right on a lot of things. But again, read the book. It's a great book. Read it with both eyes wide open and your Bible open. But some of the things he addresses, right? Like, so him and others. And I've mentioned it before on a previous podcast. So there's this chemical in our brain that is it's the chemical that we need. It's good for us, called oxytocin, that comes through shared experiences and comes through physical touch. We need that. And so what's amazing is one of the times where oxytocin is the highest is when we're having a shared meal together around a table. And so I just think of like, and sometimes it's difficult, like if you're a family that's in the middle of your sports season, or you're a family that's on the go and maybe kids have different activities in different ways, I get it. I'm not saying you have to have a traditional family meal every single day when you sit down. It's just that's not always realistic. But what me and my family have tried to do when we're going a million different directions and we know like, hey, this kid's got to be here, this kid's got to be there, we'll say, okay, let's at least, and I know it's expensive. I'm not saying you can eat out all the time. Let's at least eat out together. So we're still sitting around a table. It may not be the table in our house, but we're making it a point that, like, even if it's the table at Panda Express, we're sitting around a table and we're able to have that together, and there's no screens, right? Because that idea of being together increases that chemical in your brain, and it is so important. And this is the last thing I'll say, Troy, about this before I kick it back to you. I just think it's so cool that what is the thing that our Lord creates as a common ritual that we're supposed to repeat till the end of time, till he comes back. And I believe will even continue even into eternity. And Jesus gives us the Lord's Supper.
Absolutely.
And what is the point? Coming together, drinking and eating together, and celebrating him. And that very act, just from a very physical, material level, is doing something in our brain. I can't imagine what it's doing spiritually in our hearts when we do that. So anyway, there's a lot more I could say, but I'll kick it back to you.
I'm so glad you mentioned the Lord's Supper. I mean, that is a unifying thing, obviously celebrated by Christians.
Yes.
Man, it's like science is finally catching up to the Bible, right?
100%.
There's a physiological thing going on here that's actually good for our bodies, our minds, our souls.
Yes.
In remembering the Lord. You mentioned the anxious generation. We'll put that in reference in the show notes.
Yeah.
But let's just be honest. I mean, we look at our present culture, the rise in suicide, anxiety, mental disorders, just worry, all these things on display. Cognitive decline, the inability to focus. I'm sure you see that in the academic world, just a breakdown in the ability. a lot of this is being fueled. We're just, now discovering slowly but surely that it's being caused in part by screen time.
Yeah.
And you can see this. I don't know.
The link is strong.
It is very strong. And I don't know if that book references it. One other book I would reference is for readers is called Screen Kids by Gary Chapman and Arlene Pellicane.
Nice.
And she actually came to Knoxville and spoke. My wife and I listened to her in a parenting conference and shared some of these themes. It was really awesome. And she gets into this idea how it's linked to all kinds of disorders like obesity in children, lack of focus, disinterest in sports, activities, all of that because of they're being inundated by screens. And in the beginning of her book, she actually references this, and maybe he does in his. It's really interesting. The big tech giants, they don't let their kids on their devices.
Yes. Yeah. That's almost becoming common knowledge.
Yes.
That they don't do that.
It's like they know something, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, it's like they've read the psychological reports on what this does to the human brain and how it creates this endless desire for dopamine hits. I know that's a cliche, and people say, but that is true.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it's becoming an addictive drug. So anyway. Sorry.
No,
you were saying.
Right. No,
yeah.
Exactly right. And it's once you get there, and I'm glad you mentioned addiction. Once you get there, that is your expectation. And so if anything else, any other activity or even relationship does not give you that same hit, you don't want it.
Well, that's why people would rather just sit around at a table at a restaurant and be on their phone than talk to the person in front of them, because I hate to say it, at some level you feel like you're getting more fulfillment, which is a lie, but you're getting more fulfillment from the doom scroll than you are having to take the energy to tell a story to your kids, listen to your wife about her day. So no, that's a real danger. I want to mention one thing real quick before I forget.
Yeah.
So in Anxious Generation, he has two great, lots of great chapters.
Sure.
But there's 3 chapters that are really good. One is essentially what screen time does and how social media and other kinds of things are affecting females. So I like how he splits it up by gender. He says, boys and girls are different. There are which is a controversial statement in some circles today. Boys and girls are different. Their chemical makeup is different, and it affects them differently because they're different kinds of social creatures. And one of the things about social media, which it's supposed to create community, and if we're not careful, he says that social media actually, studies show it harms girls more than boys. And it says there's a correlation. Studies show that heavy users of social media have higher rates of depression and other disorders than light users or non-users. The correlation is larger and clearer for girls. Heavy users, so being girls more than boys, are 3 times as likely to be depressed.
Wow, 3 times.
3 times than non-users.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this is a social scientist who's done a ton of work, and he's summarizing these points for us people who read the book. But that's something to pay attention to.
Now, there are some real issues there, and I was just, as I was talking with you, I remember my wife and I were talking about this news article where a brother, I don't know if you heard about it, it was pretty recently, a brother killed his brother, stabbed him to death because of something in a video game happened. He took his video game away or something like that. I'm not making this up.
It doesn't surprise me.
But this, think about like the level of mental state you have to be to get to that point, almost like an augmented reality. You don't even know what you're doing, that it leads to rage. I mean, there is a real physiological thing happening here. In social media, we could lump in video games, online gaming, we could lump it all together. There's some real things that cause, especially as parents, to pause and say, wait a minute, I need to be really mindful here.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. And when you say that, people can't see me who are listening. I chuckled a little bit. I didn't chuckle. I'm not chuckling at the fact that someone was killed over a video game. I'm chuckling because but this is the sad part. This is where it leads to. I was chuckling because there's a lot of, it's become a thing on social media where people will pull pranks on their video game addicted siblings and
yeah.
hide their consoles or hide their games that they love.
And they lose it.
And they hide their phone and they'll videotape them losing it, and then they'll publicize it. Some people, I think, have even made like fake versions of this. Like there's a fake one where this dad runs over his kids' video games with a lawnmower. Well, I've come to find out that was staged. It was not real. But some of those are real. And so like I remember like some of them, and I've caught myself, some of them are funny to watch at first. And then as a dad, as I become a dad, I've started to think like those videos are not funny anymore.
No.
I start to think about, and then when you tell me something like which I believe, like someone, people get so angry that they would
commit violence,
commit violence and harm someone or kill someone even over. It's because that there's some kind of weird hole. And again, we're talking about the psychology here. I don't want to ignore the spiritual aspect here. There is a spiritual aspect to that. And what I mean by that, I'm not trying to sound like say, well, the devil's in the electricity. I'm not. That's not what. But what I'm saying is that there's real spiritual forces behind some of these things, and when it feels like that there's addictions or any addiction or stronghold, there is a spiritual malevolence behind that. So
any stronghold. That's a really good point.
Any stronghold.
And think about it this way: this is accessible to any age, anywhere in the world. I mean, people like in Africa and remote villages and stuff have smartphones. So think about the power of that. It's not like some drug that you have to kind of get off, some shady back alley or whatever. It's free, legal, open, and accessible to anyone at any time. Yeah. And so that I think is the important thing for us to be mindful of. There's a couple of fallouts, I think, particularly as parenting. Like I think that, and I'm not like an expert in parenting, okay, but I do think that sometimes parents feel like helpless in that, because you mentioned the videos, right? You're talking about somebody who's they've went too deep with it. Like their kid is already in a pattern of, coming home, being on this game for hours and hours, and all of a sudden you try to pull back on it, and you'll hear parents be like, well, I can't do it. Or, you go out to eat and, well, I can't get them to put their phone down. Yes, you can. You can. Yeah. You can. And as parents, like, be a parent. You know what I mean? I mean, like, take it away. And I put it away and be a parent.
You're right. And again, I'm not a parenting expert either. I don't want to make this about parenting, but I've heard multiple people say this, both Christian and non-Christian, in kind of the parenting advice world. Like them or love them, Jordan Peterson, he says
very practical.
Yeah, very practical. So not a Christian, don't agree with everything he says, but Jordan Peterson has made the point, I've heard him say this publicly, that, and he's gleaned this from years of talking to people and doing doing some family counseling and talking to people about their parenting experiences and sibling experiences. But he said that if a parent does not correct the behavior of their child when they're in the toddler stage, and that kind of toddler behavior continues into adulthood, when it's cute and they throw a fit and they say no, like everyone just kind of smiles and laughs. It's not cute when you're trying to take that Nintendo DS away from an 18-year-old at Chili's, and he just loses it on you, and you have no control. Who was essentially a grown man at that point. I wish that was far and few between, but those examples are not. And so he said, if you don't discipline your child to put off or not engage in the things that you find socially disturbing or distracting or unacceptable, then they will grow into that as an adult, not knowing that those are not things that are socially okay. And then what happens is you begin to resent them as their own parent. And if you resent them as the parent, then what do you think about people that are not related? What do you think people are going to think that are not related to them? And I think it comes back to this idea of, again, being an individual and wanting to breed individuals and not having shared bonds and experiences. And I've had to fight that too, because the cultural impulse is strong. When you want to tell your kid to not do something, the first thing, and it's like this voice that I kind of push out, the voice that pops into my head is, well, maybe that's just them. Maybe they're let them
they're
be
different than you.
Let them be an individual. Yeah, they're different than you. Let them be an individual. Let them be their own person. And it's like. And then I kind of snap in and I'm like, no, I think that's annoying. And you know what? I'm pretty sure 90% of America thinks that what they're doing is annoying. And the only reason I'm willing to let it go right now is because they're 4 years old. But I bet if they were 14 years old, I would slap that iPad or whatever out of their hands because it's not okay. And so I try to think like, if I were not their parent, what would I, like if I'm sitting across this person as just sitting across the table from this person is just someone I've met and want to spend time with, the things that they're doing, are they someone that I would like to hang out with? So maybe that's selfish. I don't think it is because I'm trying to think of my kids and doing that. But I'm like, I want to raise my kids to be people that I actually want to hang out with and be around. And I think that can be done with letting them have their own interests, letting them have their own loves and likes, but also being careful about how far we let that go.
Yeah, but the technology, that's a really, really good point. So let me dig into that. So the technology is promoting individualism to the point where you think you're the only one in the world.
Yeah.
And as parents, we got to make them realize they're not the only ones in the world.
They're not.
And these the screen time is breeding what I would think of is like entitlement. I'm entitled to my own little world, my own little
That's a good
dopamine
point.
hits, my own little things. And when we try to take that away, which is a healthy thing, it's a good thing. There's a time for that. All right. There's a time for that, there's a time not for that. Like when you're out to eat, you mentioned going out to eat or whatever. Hey, there's a time for you to be here with us. Be present, be mindful. Because just because you're in the same room doesn't mean you're actually in the same room. You know what I mean?
It does.
And it's something that we have to battle and be mindful of to make sure we push back and help kids understand that there are other, like it is good to think about other people, to listen, to care. You can find real joy, real pleasure, lasting pleasure in those relationships that are real, not the virtual one.
That's right.
So I kind of hit on the kids a little bit in parenting, but let's think about it this way. They're also like, all right, there are grown men that are like addicted to video games.
I know. You
know what I mean? And so that's a real problem when they are, let's say, forfeiting their God-given duty to parent, to lead. We've talked about it before. To go, online game for hours. I'm not trying to be a big fuddy-duddy here, but I grew up playing video games, and I can see the appeal there.
I did as well.
But man, Stephen, I grew up.
Yeah. What does Paul say? He goes, when I was a child, I spoke like a child and acted like a child, and I became a man. I put childish ways behind.
Yeah, and so I think there's a place for that, like just a challenge to men in particular, because I think there is a little bit more of, you mentioned the social media and the impact on women and females. I think for the gaming, it might be a little bit more on the flip side for boys and men, but there's a time you need to set that aside and take on real responsibilities.
Well, so that, and again, this is not a masculinity podcast, but there is. So I do have to say something about that. So I will, and again, I'm not looking. You're right. Men need to step up in this area, and I don't want to find an outside reason and blame it on that. But I will say this. I think part of it is culture, men and women, moms and dads, schools, sports. A lot of us have failed young men in this area. Is we've emasculated them, and so again, not this is not a free pass, right? For them to act like this. So hear me out. I'm not making an excuse for them, but so let's take adult men for example. I think some of them feel so emasculated and out of control in their normal lives that video games is an escape.
It's an outlet.
Because when I think of successful men, and I don't mean successful like you have a ton of money. I mean like you're doing what God wants you to do. Like you have a wife, you have children, you're in a job, you're building something, you're creating things, you're contributing to the kingdom of God and to your community, right? You're on a campaign, right? Your real life is a campaign. You don't need a video game with your buddies to go on campaign, right? You have a real mission. There are real enemies that don't have flesh and blood, spiritual enemies that you're fighting against every single day. And I think if guys would just change that mindset and realize, like, yeah, my job, my family, my church community, like, this is a part of my mission that God has given me and has put me on. And I think sometimes is we make things too easy for guys, or we shut men out from certain experiences, or we tell them that the things that they're built to do is toxic. And so they're like, okay, well, if this is like, and some of them will, so the ones that don't realize what's happening will say, oh, if this is toxic, they got to get that. So what do? They go play Witcher, and they pick up a sword and battle, or they'll go play, what's the other one? Not Dungeons and Dragons, but World of Warcraft. That was big, yeah. Yeah, so like they get, and I'm not. If you play World of Warcraft, I'm not ripping on you. I'm not ripping on you if you play Witcher. I'm not. But those are these.
What's the appeal? It's a journey, right?
Yeah, you're slaying monsters. Yeah. You're going into battle. You're achieving something with a team. Men need that.
Absolutely.
And so if you feel like you've been pushed out of spaces or emasculated to where you can't speak into those places, and a lot of times there's sometimes like HR policies and things are set up in a way where it's like, if they've tried to guard against a true like toxic male dominance in the workplace, which it was a thing, right? It wasn't, but then in overcorrection to that,
yes,
they've just kept men from being able to be men and have the real life adventure that they're called to have in their work, in their families, in their communities, and that's a big part of that.
Man, I that is so awesome, because it just hit me like, as a Christian man, my greatest adventure is my family. Like,
yes,
God has given me the mission to live it out, to raise disciples, young disciples for Jesus Christ, to protect, provide for, care for my wife. Like, we should view that as the adventure, right? The journey that God's called us to go on. And so you're right. So when that's robbed from certain people, especially non-Christians, they got to find it somewhere, right? Some virtual maybe adventure. And they miss it. It just hit me. I was thinking, we kind of read, and I know we've talked about it before, we read into like this, the life of Jesus and his teaching, his healing, all these wonderful things. But he was also a carpenter. Like, he worked with his hands.
Yes.
Paul was a tent maker.
Yes.
Like, those are good things. Get outside, do work. We just had a big freeze, a big real cold spell. My son is really enjoying splitting wood with me right now.
That's cool.
Like, just getting out. He like, hey, Dad, you splitting wood today? Like, yeah, man, let's go conquer that stump, dude.
Yeah.
And so you can see that bubbling up. And it may seem like not a big deal, but like, if you view all of these things, and yes, there's a physical battle, there's a spiritual battle, that is the real life. Like, that is the true experience that God's put in front of us, not a digital one.
Well, you know what? So you mentioned that experience with your son. You know what's going to happen? Like, the next time when he's older and he gets stressed out, he's going to go outside and he's going to split some wood.
Yeah.
He's not going to go hide in his room and play on a video game.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, oh, man. And then because you know why? Because this was something that he really enjoyed doing.
Sure.
That made him feel good doing it.
And accomplished it.
And he accomplished it.
Yep.
I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Yep.
And so it's you're discipling him, you're catechizing him towards good things. So real quick, we've been talking about some good stuff. I want to talk a little bit about, I know you said you wanted to talk about the effects of the death of the monoculture in the church.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
So hopefully, as folks have been listening, you can kind of pick up on maybe the impact on the church, because I think it's important for us as Christians. We talked about the family, individuals, the church as a whole. There's some things that you can see this creeping into the church, and I'll give you a few like observations. These are my observations. There's this pressure to have constant change, high energy, performative things, constantly on the move to keep people's attention.
Yes.
So we've got to have.
I know pastors feel the pressure.
Yeah, we got to have a new program.
Yeah.
We got to have a new kind of whatever camp ministry. We got to have a new thing. In the Screw Tape letters, Lewis talks about this. He calls it the temptation that this demon is trying to tempt a Christian with. He says, get him to try to be tired of the same old thing. And he capitalizes S-O-T, same old thing. That's the temptation. Get him tired of the same old church, the same old hymns, the same old Bible, the same old God. That's the subtle. And so I think our culture is pressuring constantly to adapt, to shift, maybe even, Stephen, get tired of the same old doctrine. We need to catch up with the times, right? We need to catch up with modernity.
It's probably why every new generation has some kind of like heresy that pops up, because people are trying to reinvent the wheel where it doesn't need to be. Yeah.
And so there's distractions. I mean, you've probably seen it. And listen, like, hey, if you look at your phone during a service, I'm not trying to knock at you. Hey, sometimes it happens or whatever. But I remember one time going to a service recently, and I sat in an area that I normally don't sit in. It was kind of toward the back. But there was a kid, like, right behind me, two kids, actually, and they were, like, 12, 14 years old, and they were totally on a device the entire service.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what are you...
Yeah.
You're robbing your kid of God's word and fellowship with Christians. They can sit and listen for 30 minutes. It's not going to hurt them. In fact, it's going to help them. You're hurting them by allowing that to happen. Why? Because you want to keep them quiet. You want to keep them entertained. No, it's the wrong choice.
Yeah, well, it's the not going back to the conversation, not to make this a parenting thing, but it's you're not wanting to have the fight early on, and all you're doing is you're making the fight worse for when they're a lot older. And so it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, when you should have taken that out of their hand when they're 3 or 4, and now they're 13, 14, and if I do try to take it from them, it's you've already lost them.
Yeah.
You've already lost them in some ways.
It's going to be a really uphill battle.
Oh, it's going to be bad. So again, it's not me tooting my own horn. There's a lot of things I fail at as a parent. But we like to bring our girls go to Bible study at our church, and they have their own age segregated Bible study. But I like to take them into the main service.
Yeah.
And what I do is do I say, because I have a 5-year-old, so I'm like, all right, you can color.
Here's a coloring sheet.
You can color, and you can, I'll tell them, like, anyway, you can color, and you can keep yourself like somewhat fidget free. But it's like when they start to like act up or make noise, I just use good old fashioned, hey, well, I'm going to have to take you outside, and there's going to be some consequences. Yeah. And you know what? People that are listening to this, maybe they think that that's wrong or egregious. I'm just going to say it's biblical to have a healthy structure of discipline for your children. It's biblical.
They need it.
The Proverbs, yes, they need it. If you just let things go, or you do kind of like the whole, hey, let's put that down now. It's like, yeah. So my mom was Spanish.
And you cave.
Yeah. My mom. I grew up with a Spanish mom. She was from another country. She was from Ecuador. That whole now would have never. Yeah, sorry. Maybe that was a little loud on the mic. That would have never flown with me. And you know what?
Not gonna happen.
I was better off for it. So anyway.
Well, no, it's a great point, man. Something has happened where we like. There's this cultural pressure to think that, hey, you gotta. Like it's okay for your kids not like you sometimes.
Yes, you're not their friend.
You're the only dad or the only mom, like, by birth or whatever. Hopefully that God, that if you've, I'm not talking about adoption or anything like that, but like you've been entrusted as their parent. Be their parent. They're going to have friends. They're going to have hopefully countless friends.
Yeah,
they're going to have one parent.
Yes.
Be that parent is my point.
Have the hard conversation.
Have the hard conversation. It's okay to say no and have those boundaries. But in the church, I think you got to really you got to kind of wade through the decisions you're making, both in leadership and in lay ministry. And yes, as congregants, am I able to disconnect and be present, like truly present for prayer? Or is my mind wandering elsewhere? And I'm not just we're all guilty of it. I get it. Why is that happening? Well, we're constantly being fueled by change on our phones all the time. It's hard to go to a place of worship and settle, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to do that. And so we've got to kind of train that and prepare ourselves and not miss out on what God's doing.
That's right.
So maybe as we kind of land the plane, I want to talk about if you have any thoughts on some practical advice. I know you've already given a lot of really good stuff for parents, and I just want to kind of summarize those for all of us and for family members. Because it's not just like the kids that are battling this. We referenced our books, but it's us too. A lot of our kids do want to look at the device because we look at the device. I mentioned Arlene Pellicane and the Screen Kids. She has this kind of funny analogy in here that we often treat our smartphones like another little child. We wrap it in a safe covering. We keep it close to us at all times. If it makes a noise, we come running.
It's a baby that never grows up.
It's a baby that never grows up. And we laugh, but think about that. And it's pretty crazy. And so it's not just a problem out there, Stephen. It's a problem right here that we kind of have to battle too.
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge and really be mindful of it. We need to model it too. You can't expect, and I know it's hard, a lot of our work's on our computers and stuff, but if you're never off a screen, it's going to be really hard to tell your kids to get off the screen.
Yeah.
So we got to be mindful of it. You've probably seen it before where, I think of at least a flight, and maybe I was one time at Dollywood. I remember it's the same type of event. An infant was screaming bloody murder. I mean, it was like a death cry, right? And it immediately calmed down when mom handed over the phone. And I'm talking about an infant. We're talking about 1 or below. Man, that is a problem. You're creating a really big problem. So you got to be really careful. And I think for some, I've heard people talk about this, and I don't know if you've ever tried it or practiced it. I've heard of a digital Sabbath almost, where you're totally off tech for a period of time, and people can choose the periods of windows, times of the day, just unplugged.
Yeah. So we do that at my house. And again, if we're watching something, I'm in the room with my kids, and I have a say in what we're watching, not like in a dad's trying to control the TV kind of thing, but I'm very intentional about shared cultural experiences. So if we're sitting down for a movie, it's a family movie.
Yeah.
If we're sitting down to watch cartoons, or a show, it's something that that spans generations that we can all enjoy, that we can talk through as a family. And then there's times where so when we come home from school, one of the big, and they'll still ask hey, can we
Sure.
watch a cartoon or whatever, because they enjoy it, right? But my wife will put on Pandora or some kind of music app, and we'll give them choices. You can go read, you can go they can go craft. So I've invested in our whole loft area. My sister got 3 old school desks that she painted pink for the girls. And so I went ahead and I installed those school desks up in the loft. And then I've created this whole, basically it's this crafting center where they have their own cubbies and things like that. And so we'll collect throughout the year like pipe cleaners and different supplies and gifts that people give. So it's like, hey, if you don't want to read, or you don't want to play one of the 100 board games that we have, or you don't want to play with some of the toys that you have, like a lot of the times my girls, they like to just craft. And so they'll go up, and sometimes it's just stuff like they're gluing stuff together and making, but that's what we do. And so I would rather than investing in like screens or paying for apps or plugins or things like that, subscriptions, I would much rather pay for like craft supplies. And so they've gotten to the point where they just know, like, if they don't like one of the options I give of like reading or playing, or they'll go craft. A lot of times if it's a good day, they all play a game together. And so, but you just kind of got to give them room and space to do that. I try not to facilitate that. The dad in me is like, hey, why don't we all sit down? Why don't you play this and then include your sister this way? And it's like that always ends in disaster. If I just say like, hey, here are your options, they'll naturally build tents, build forts. They like to play games like shopkeeper, or restaurant, where one's the chef and one's taking orders, and that will just kind of organically happen. And and I'll say, like, because the older two always want to exclude the younger one, and so it's like, hey, I love the game you're doing. Find a way to include your sister, and that's the only instruction I'll give. And just giving them that freedom to have a lot of free play. I've also, because this is something that he talks about in Anxious Generation, is letting them, which this is a little, that doesn't directly relate to the shared cultural experiences, but like if we're at a store, I'll let them go places by themselves. To do certain things. Now I want to be careful. I don't let my 5-year-old roam around Walmart by myself. But like, let's say we're at a store and she wants to go pay for something. Well, and like the checkout counter is like 50 feet away, and I can see her, right? So like, all right, here's the cash, or here's the card. Go. Yeah. And that's what I'll say, and I'll watch her have to go and like take this Pez dispenser or a piece of gum and figure it out. Yeah. And that's good for them. Absolutely. Or like let them go outside. That's one of the reasons why we moved to Tennessee, because where we were previously in Florida, I didn't feel like we could do that. In my neighborhood in Tennessee, I feel like I can let them go outside by themselves. I keep a window open so I can hear them. So if someone's like, oh, there's a stick through my leg, right? Like if someone's dying, I can hear it. But it's like, I hear the laughter, I hear the chatter. As long as we hear that, we know that things are okay. And I'm going to tell you, that has been very hard to do for both my wife and I, because we want it naturally. Like the urge to helicopter is strong, but we've just kind of let them like do that. And then they learn to play. They have what he calls like kind of like semi-risky play. Of course. And where they're off on their own, there's no adult around to kind of arbitrate things for them or mediate. And all of that's really good. And it helps them, I think, get away from that addiction time to screens. And then they long for this free play time. Real moments. These real moments. Instead of these like, being watching TV and watching someone else do things for them, right? Like YouTubers are really big. There's a lot of cool science YouTubers where they make things explode. And like there's a YouTuber that my kids, he has shows on Netflix now that we will watch together. And he does elephant toothpaste, which is like this concoction mix. Blows up. And it blows up. And so, like, we'll do some of that sometimes, but I also say, like, all right, we'll turn it off. All right, we've watched him do it. Why don't you guys go do something like that? And because a lot of what it turns into is they're just watching other people do stuff. It's gotten weird, Troy, right now, but it's really popular where young boys will watch other boys play video games. I know. Yeah, think about that. It's like I'm not gonna play video games. I'm gonna watch someone else play video games. That's like twice removed from reality. Like I'm watching someone watch something and do something that's not connected to reality. That's weird. I mean, kids will try to explain to me why they do it and why it's appealing. I just think that that's so strange, and there's something wrong with that.
Absolutely. And we should not be afraid to say it. That is strange.
That's weird.
That is bizarre.
Go outside and play something.
You're outsourcing your life.
Yes. You're not even... Yeah, anyway.
I mean, no, think about it. You are living vicariously through someone else when you could be going and experiencing many of these things yourself.
You're vicariously living through someone else who's vicariously living through someone else.
And so it's not sad. And we wonder why there's so much, mental disorders going on, right? I mean, that is a breakdown of who we're supposed to be. So I think that would be one of the hopefully there's some takeaways for everyone, and there's certainly for me. Is this really where I want to spend my life? As a parent, let's take it about parenting again. When your kids grow up, they leave the house. Are we going to say, man, Stephen, I wish I had given them more screen time?
Yeah, no. You're going to want that
You're going to want that time back. You're going to want them around. You're going to want them to explore, like you said, doing maybe some risks here, so they can be prepared for life. And then for us individuals, is this like the best use of my time? I mean, there's so much you can read about and learn about and explore and find in relationships and learn, and just observing somebody else doing something and then endlessly scrolling to the next sort of pointless video. It's mind-numbing. It's causing us to break down, I think, in our minds, our creativity, who God wants us to be.
Not know how to hold normal conversations with people. Yeah.
And so we have to be really careful, both as individuals, as families, as the church, about what screens are doing. I'm thankful we referenced a couple books. I think people are kind of coming around to this, and maybe many of you out there have already thought about these things. I know that it's something my wife and our family really thinks about a lot, and so it's okay to set up screen boundaries, screen time, off-limit zones. Like you said, go out and be creative. What do I do outside? I don't know. Just do it. Well, okay. And then you know what
Build
happens?
Something.
I have found these pile of sticks and rocks and stuff. Can I? Yes.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Especially with boys. I think now within reason, you want to give boys some things that are semi-dangerous. Not that they're going to kill themselves.
Sure.
But give them some nails and a hammer and some wood.
Yes.
Yeah, it's well, what if he sticks the nail in his hand?
He'll do it once.
He'll do it once. He'll still be alive. It'll be okay.
Yep.
But that's good. That's good for him. Let him pick up an axe and split some wood.
Yeah.
I remember. So it's real quick, funny story. So I was sitting at a breakfast one time. It was a school breakfast at a church that was connected to school. Not where I'm currently at.
Uh-huh.
This is back in Florida.
Yeah,
but our lead pastor, I love our current lead pastor, but this is our lead pastor back in Florida, also a great guy. So he was sitting down at this breakfast with a bunch of teachers, and one of them she was a new mom, and she had a young boy, very young boy, and then an infant boy, and he had 7 boys, right?
Oh my gosh.
Oh no, I'm sorry, he had 6 boys, 2 girls. He had 6 boys, raised 6 boys. And she goes, hey, you've raised a lot of young men. She goes, what would be the biggest advice that you'd have to share with me as a young mom? And she was very cautious and didn't want her boys so she was very, very protective of her boys. And so the first thing he tells her is, he goes, don't ever say the words stop that or be careful. And it was something like that. I mean, he definitely said, don't ever say the words "be careful" to your boy. And you should have seen her face. She was I say that every gasping. Day. And she's like, I say that every day. He's and he gave an example. He's like, if your boy's up on top of a park bench and he's ready to Peter Pan off that thing, let him do it.
Go for it.
Let him do it. He goes, because he's not going to kill himself. He might get a bloody nose, but it's good for him. And then when he does it and he lands, right? They're like, hey, that's awesome, bud. Man, you are so strong. That's what you need to be telling him. Not, hey, be careful. No, little Johnny, don't touch. Like that kills young boys.
Yeah.
And I remember that conversation. She was floored. Like, and I don't know what was going through her mind at the time. It was either that's the best advice I've ever heard, or I am never asking you for advice again. But as a guy that's raised 6 boys, I mean, I would say he's kind of an expert. He knows what he's doing, and his boys weren't young. A lot of them were grown up at the time. So anyway, that connects to the screen time thing in a little bit.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I wanted to share
well,
that
and
story.
even your illustration about your girls with the painting, like. Even for that is maybe a feminine example, like letting them make a mess.
Yes, messes are important.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Like, hey, you might end up. Who knows? Maybe one of those, because you allow like some exploration there, some, not helicoptering right. Maybe they become the next great artist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we got to be. I just love the example that you shared, because it just made me think. Hey, we let them figure it out sometimes.
Yeah.
And what we think this is doing, the screen, is actually keeping them holed in a reality that isn't real.
Yeah.
And it's robbing them of childhood, of life. And we're seeing the downstream effect today in our society, the breakdown of monoculture. And I hope that there's a bit of a turn. I hope there's a bit. I'm optimistic. It's a big doom and gloom episode. There's something we can do about this.
Oh, I think there already is. I think there's whole movements again, like Christian, non-Christian, conservative, and progressive. There's whole movements that are getting away because they realize, because the data's there, that this is not a good thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too, Troy. Thanks.
Yep. Talk to you later. Thanks again for listening to Holy Tangents. If you'd like to support us, you can visit us on our Patreon page at patreon.com/ProReggaeMedia. Currently, we are working on developing a club membership where we will be releasing exciting bonus content. In the meantime, you can donate any amount to help fund this project so we can keep having conversations on topics like the ones today. By the way, if there is a topic you would like us to discuss, please email us at proreggaemediagroup@gmail.com. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and have a great weekend.